Hiring the right person can seriously feel like searching for a needle in a haystack. It is, without a doubt, one of the biggest decisions any company can make. So, today, let's pull back the curtain on the science of employee selection. We're going to dive into the tools that can turn what feels like a gamble into a really smart, calculated choice, so you can find that perfect fit. We've all heard the stories, right? Or maybe we've even lived them. The whole hiring process can sometimes feel like a scene straight out of a sitcom. A simple question gets wildly misunderstood, and all of a sudden, a candidate with a PhD is somehow down as passed high school with difficulties. And yeah, it's funny in a cartoon, but in the real world, miscommunications like that can have some pretty serious consequences. And that's the real question, isn't it? How do you move past just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best? Well, the answer is all about building a structured, evidence-based system for how you test and select people. And it is absolutely crucial, because hiring isn't just some little HR task you check off a list. It's a high-stakes game that directly impacts, every single part of the business, from the bottom line all the way to the courtroom. See, getting it wrong is just incredibly costly. First up, performance. That's kind of the obvious one, right? People with the right skills just do a better job. Then you've got the sheer financial cost. The time and money that goes into recruiting, interviewing, and training is huge. On top of that, there are serious legal risks. Sloppy hiring can lead to things like negligent hiring claims if an employee ends up causing harm. And finally, there's fit. A candidate might have all the right skills, but if they just don't jive with the company culture, it's pretty much a recipe for disaster. So, how do we dodge all these expensive mistakes? Well, it turns out that any truly effective hiring process is built on two core principles. You can kind of think of them as the golden rules of hiring. And these two pillars are reliability and validity. Okay, so reliability is all about consistency. If a person takes the same test twice, are their scores going to be pretty similar? Validity, on the other hand, is about accuracy. Is the test actually measuring something that will predict how well someone does the job? And here's the key takeaway. You absolutely need both. A test that isn't reliable is just random noise. And a test that isn't valid, well, it's completely useless for predicting success. I love this analogy with the bathroom scale because it makes it crystal clear. A reliable scale will show you the exact same number every single time you step on it, but if that number is consistently 5 pounds off, it's not valid. It's reliable, sure, but it's reliably wrong. And that's the goal in hiring. We need our tests to be both consistent and accurate predictors of success. Now, what's really cool about this is how it visualizes the idea. Look at the left. You see this scatter plot where there's just no relationship between the scores on the first test and the second. It's just random noise. That's an unreliable test. But then look at the right. You see a clear pattern, a straight line. The scores line up. Someone who scored high the first time scored high the second time. That's reliability. It's consistent and it's predictable. So how do companies make sure their tests are actually valid? It's a really thorough process. First, they analyze the job to figure out what skills or predictors are totally essential for success. Then they pick out tests designed to measure those specific things. Now, step 3 is the really clever part. They give the test to their current employees. Why? Because then they can compare those test scores to their actual real-world job performance. If your top performers also happen to get top scores, you know you're on the right track. And finally, they cross-validate, basically repeating the whole process to make sure the results weren't just a fluke. Okay, so now that we've got the foundations of reliability and validity down, let's peek inside the recruiter's toolbox. Let's look at the specific tools they use to measure a candidate's potential, and you're going to see there are quite a few. Generally speaking, these tests fall into 4 main buckets. First, you've got cognitive tests, which measure things like intelligence and reasoning. Then there are motor and physical ability tests, for jobs that need steady hands or quick reaction times. We also have personality tests, which try to get at an applicant's core traits. And finally, achievement tests, which just test what you already know, your job knowledge. But I want to zoom in on one of these because they're really fascinating. Personality tests. They're interesting because they try to measure all those deeper things about a person that a resume just can't show you. A lot of modern personality tests are built around what psychologists call the big 5 dimensions. So you've got extroversion, which is how outgoing someone is. Agreeableness is all about being cooperative and trusting. Then there's conscientiousness, and this one is super interesting because research shows it's one of the best predictors of job performance no matter the role. It's all about being dependable and responsible. Neuroticism, or emotional stability, is about how calm and secure a person is. And finally, openness to experience looks at imagination and curiosity. And this visual makes a really important point. These aren't just labels you slap on someone. Each trait is a spectrum. For instance, a sales job might be great for someone who's high on the extroversion scale, but a research job might be better for someone on the lower end. It's all about matching a candidate's unique profile to what the job actually demands. Okay, so it's one thing to talk about skills and personality traits, but what about seeing them in action? Well, that's where we move from the theoretical tests to some really practical, hands-on simulations. The idea here is so simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Instead of just asking if someone has the skills, you put them in a situation they'd actually face on the job, and you just watch how they handle it. It's one of the best ways to predict how someone's actually going to perform. And there are a few common ways companies give this test drive. Situational judgment tests basically give you a what would you do if scenario. For leadership roles, they might use a management assessment center. These are intense, sometimes multi-day simulations, where candidates have to tackle all sorts of realistic management problems. And another really clever one is miniature job training, where you teach a candidate a core task and then see how well they learn it and perform it right there on the spot. But here's the thing, and this is so important. You can find the most skilled, most qualified person on the planet, but it can still all fall apart if their expectations of the job don't match the reality of it. That's why a great hire is all about transparency from the very beginning. And that's exactly what a realistic job preview, or an RJP, is for. It's basically a commitment to being honest. You don't just sell the good parts of the job, you show them everything. The good, the bad, and the ugly. The daily tasks, the company culture, but also the challenges. Now, some candidates might walk away after an RJP, and that's okay, because the ones who stay are far more likely to stick around for the long haul. Okay, so after all the tests, all the simulations, and all the interviews, there is one last crucial step before that job offer goes out: verification. When you really boil it down, a background check does two main things. First, it's about simple verification, making sure everything on that resume is actually true. And second, it's about protecting the company, uncovering any red flags that could put the business or its other employees at risk. And this final stage can be really comprehensive. We're talking formal background investigations, calling up references to check on past performance, using special screening services, and for some jobs, it might even include things like substance abuse screening. Every piece just adds another layer of confidence before making that final decision. So we've gone all the way from funny misunderstandings to this really sophisticated toolkit of tests, simulations, and background checks. It kind of makes you wonder, right? With all this data and all these tools, have we finally cracked the code? Has hiring finally become a perfect science? Or is finding the right person always going to be a little bit of science and a little bit of art? Definitely something to think about.